This is also produced by human. This is produced by human body whose deficiency causes goiter. You may have heard of this word goiter, which is the sudden expansion of these thyroid glands. Chloroform is usually used as an anesthetic in medical purposes. Pyrene, common name for CCl4, is used for fire extinguisher. And halothane, which is also known as fluorothane, and it is also used as anesthetic during surgeries. So these are few common terms you must know about haloalkanes. Now coming to the type of reactions, today we'll focus mainly on SN type of reactions. We have several type of substitution reactions in which SN2, SN1, SNI, SNNGP, SNAE and SNEA. These are the different kinds. SN2 is a bimolecular nucleophilic substitution reaction. This 2 represents that there are 2 molecules involved in the reaction, and N represents it is a nucleophilic, then substitution type of a reaction. I'm pretty sure everybody is aware of that. Okay. So in general, when we talk about a nucleophilic reaction, we know that in a nucleophilic reaction, we will have a nucleophile which is attacking on a substrate to give a substitution reaction. Through a substitution reaction gives a product, and there is one group that leaves here. This attacking species is what we call it as nucleophile. Okay. This is what we call it as substrate. And generally there is always a solvent which is used, and finally we'll have leaving group. So this is the product and the leaving group which is formed. So we'll go one by one and try to understand each and every term here. First, what is the importance of nucleophile, then importance of solvent and leaving group. Okay, so this is something which you need to be clear about. So first, let us start understanding nucleophiles. When we talk about nucleophiles, because we have already studied about elimination, pretty sure you can understand that this is a nucleus loving species. This is a nucleus loving species or electron rich. You can also call it as electron rich species. Got it? Most of the time it would be either an anion or a lone pair carrying group. Sometimes a pi bond also. So this is the importance of what is a nucleophile. Here an electrophile is also an important definition for us. Although we are talking about nucleophilic substitution, we need to just recall what is an electrophile as well. Electrophile is something which accepts electrons, or it is an electron loving species, and this accepts electrons from nucleophile. Okay. Now usually whenever we talk about an electrophile, it is always a low energy. It's always a low energy anti-bonding orbitals. Okay, we'll see what exactly does that mean. In general, whenever we see a chemical reaction, generally what happens, we know that a nucleophile, right, will attack an electrophile, and this is the movement of electrons. This is how the movement of electrons are seen. In this movement of electrons, we usually, whenever we have electrophile and a nucleophile, this is the arrow by which we show that electrons are moving from nucleophile to electrophile. Now, if you have a nucleophile like Cl minus and an H plus, got it? So here I can directly represent with this dotted line showing that they already have some kind of a force of attraction, which is electrostatic. Because here the electrophile is completely positive charge and nucleophile is completely negative charge. But it is not necessary always electrophile and nucleophile reactions are only with positive and negative charges. We might also see reactions like this where you have a nitrogen which has a lone pair present on it, and there is boron which has an empty orbital present on it. Now both of them, neither of them are charged, right? But still this will act like a nucleophile. This will act like an electrophile, and there would be a movement of electrons from nucleophile to electrophile. Now this type of an interaction is an orbital interaction. This is an orbital interaction. And mostly what we will see from now onwards is about orbital interaction. See, a bond between a nucleophile and electrophile could be a simply orbital interaction, could be a simply electrostatic interaction, or could be both. Most of the time we see the combination of both. We will have both electrostatic as well as orbital interaction happening together. Okay. One thing you need to note that when we talk about nucleophile and electrophile, as long as the energy of both nucleophile and electrophile are much closer or rather more similar, then the interaction would happen at a much better way, or the bond formation will happen at a better way. What I meant to say, suppose if we have interaction, or rather I'll say best interaction is likely to be between highest in energy of filled orbital. If you just recall, we call them as HOMO orbitals, right? That is highest occupied molecular orbitals, and the lowest in energy of all of the unfilled orbitals, and what we usually call it as LUMO. Okay. Lowest unoccupied molecular orbital. As long as their energies are comparable, suppose if this is an energy profile here, let's say this is an energy diagram where I have energy of a nucleophile electrophile here. Let's say this is an electrophile's energy, and as long as we have comparable energy for nucleophile also, right, then when they interact, they will interact according to molecular orbital theory. They will interact in two ways, either a bonding kind or an anti-bonding kind. So I'm sure you know this. So if it interacts bonding kind, you know that nucleophile will have electrons and electrophile is empty in general. So when they interact, they will get a low energy orbital, which is a bond formation. Basically, it is forming a bond. So this is the HOMO orbital and this is the LUMO orbital. So just take care of that whenever we are interacting the orbitals, this is how they usually interact. Nucleophile will be in, which is the HOMO orbital, will always interact with the LUMO orbital of electron, and this gives the best bonding. And if you really want to get the best of the bonding, as I said, the energy of nucleophile and electrophile should be comparable. Then it will give the best of the orbital. If I just push the similar example, suppose if you have nitrogen with a lone pair, having here hydrogens, and suppose it is interacting with HCl. Okay. In HCl, you would see this electron, how we represent, see, this is how we represent that electrons from nucleophile are attacking the hydrogen, and maybe maybe Cl minus, which is a leaving group, is going. That's how we will get a bond formation where we have 4 hydrogens here with positive charge on it and Cl minus has left. If you see in terms of molecular orbital, how it is, actually it is the nitrogens, you know, sigma orbital, sigma electrons. These sigma orbitals are non-bonded, non-bonded as in lone pair electrons. That is actually interacting with the LUMO orbital, which is sigma star of hydrogen and chlorine, right? So this is the sigma star orbital, and electrons from here are transferring to this, or rather they are HOMO is interacting with LUMO. So this is the HOMO orbital of nitrogen interacting with LUMO orbital of nitrogen, and that's how a new sigma bond is forming. Okay, so this is the usual interaction, how a nucleophile interacts with this. Okay, one thing you need to understand from here, what conclusion you have to draw from here. Okay, that most of the time from now onwards in reactions you would see that LUMO is always going to be a sigma star or a pi star, because usually whenever we talk about electrons, one second guys. So most of the time LUMO orbitals would be either a sigma star or a pi star. Okay, for instance, if you take C double bond O, in C double bond O, right, you would see carbon and oxygen will have a sigma bond, and this would be the pi star orbital. Sorry, this would be the pi star orbital which is present on carbon, on which usually a nucleophile with a sigma electrons or a non-bonding electrons will attack. This is how the attacks take place. Okay, but if you have a saturated carbon, suppose if you have a saturated carbon like carbon with 4 bonds, like in the case of H, H, H and Cl. In case of saturated carbon, the anti-bonding which is present here, right, so that would be sigma star bond on which the nucleophile will attack. So you can see the LUMO orbitals are always either sigma star or pi star in most of the cases. Okay. So this is a basic information you must have about how the nucleophile and electrophile interact with each other. This is sufficient amount of information from molecular orbital theory. Okay. Now coming to the second aspect, if you see the overall reaction, I told you that we'll first discuss about nucleophile, then about solvent, and we'll keep on back and forth. Okay, we'll have to keep on coming back to nucleophile and solvent. First, let me introduce to the basic idea of what is solvent. Okay, you can see here, solvent is the one which provides the surface area for interaction between reagents and substrates. So whatever the nucleophile which I have taken here is the reagent, and this is the substrate on which interaction is happening. And when both of them interact, we need a solvent. I mean, for them to interact, we need a solvent. Most of the time, solvent is something which is chemically inert, right, to both substrate and reagents. In certain cases, solvent itself will act like a reagent. We'll see that case later. Now, when it comes to solvents, there are two kinds, non-polar kind and polar kind. We have studied this, so that's why I'm just going briefly on it. So non-polar solvent is something where, you know, dipole moment is 0, or polar solvent will have certain dipole moment. So these are the few species, CS2, CCl4, benzene, N-hexane, toluene. These are the cases which we see which are non-polar solvents. When it comes to polar solvents, again we have two categories, polar protic solvent, which does have an acidic hydrogen or rather a highly polarized hydrogen, and polar aprotic solvent which does not have an acidic hydrogen. Usually polar protic solvents will have very high dielectric constant, while polar aprotic solvents will have low dielectric constant. You can see the examples: water, all types of alcohols, okay, phenols, thiophenols, acids, right, H2S, RNH2, these are all, you know, polar protic solvents, ammonia and all. Now when it comes to polar aprotic solvent, you can see the list here. Okay, THF, tetrahydrofuran, DMS, dimethyl sulfide. It is just a revision, everybody, just check it out. You know all of these solvents already. Dioxane, this is the structure of dioxane. DMF, okay, dimethyl formamide, DMSO, I'm sure everybody knows DMSO, one of the very frequently used aprotic solvents. DMA, dimethyl acetamide. Similarly, we have all kind of ethers. We have cyclic ethers as well. We have HMPA, hexamethyl phosphamide, and there are a lot more aprotic solvents. These are sufficient enough for us. So you can see when we have cross ethers, normally we write this way, X crown Y. X here represents the carbon numbers, oxygen, Y represents the oxygen numbers. Like for example, if this is the structure, it can be written in this form saying that it is 12 crown 4. Okay, so these are few polar aprotic solvents. I think all of you got this point now, right? Going further into details, what we need to see here is a definition of nucleophilicity. We have studied 2 points here. First, what is a nucleophile? What is a what is the type of solvents we'll be using? Then what exactly is this nucleophilicity? See, if we have electron pair, right, electron pair, and we are donating, that is electron pair donor forming bond with with an atom other than hydrogen, okay, other than H plus, is called a nucleophile. Strictly a nucleophile is something which is forming a bond other than hydrogen, and this phenomena is called nucleophilicity. This phenomena is called nucleophilicity. In short, if we have Cl minus combining with H plus, okay, now you can see this is the nucleophile here and this is the electrophile. Both of them are interacting with each other, but this type of an interaction, we call this species as a base. We do not call it as a nucleophile. But if the same interaction, Cl minus, is making an interaction with something like CH3 by leaving this group here, and we get a bond CH3Cl plus Lg minus. Now this type of an interaction here, we strictly call it as a nucleophile. And this phenomena to attack the atom which is other than hydrogen is called its nucleophilicity. So in short, you can see nucleophilicity is a measure of how readily an atom donates its electron pair to the other electron deficient atom. Okay. So it is characterized by rate constant K, making it a kinetic property. Very important point here. So nucleophilicity is always about its kinetics. Okay, so it is going to be a kinetic property. While basicity, if you can see how chlorine is attacking this hydrogen here. Now this is a measure of how readily an atom donates its electron pair to a proton. H plus is nothing but a proton. Now it is characterized by its equilibrium constant Kb. Okay, so Kb or Ka depending upon what you are talking. Okay, whether you are talking about conjugate acid, then it is Ka. If it is a base, it is Kb, and is therefore a thermodynamic property. Okay. So whenever we talk about equilibrium constants, Ka, Kb, these are all thermodynamic properties. Okay. In short, how we need to perceive this? See, proton is something which is spherical. H plus is a spherical species. So there is no need of orientation, right? So when it comes to basic strength. So whenever we are talking about bases, we do not think about its orientation, because from any end, any side, it can always attack that H plus. But for nucleophilic strength, we need to consider its orientation as well as what happens to the solvent, what kind of a solvent we are using. So this is the major difference between a nucleophilicity and basicity. So nucleophilicity, in short, it is attacking any species other than hydrogen, while basicity is attack on H plus ion or protons. While nucleophilicity is a kinetic property, basicity is a thermodynamic property, and nucleophilicity always considers the orientation and solvent effects, while basicity does not have any such problem. It is direct interaction with proton. You can see some list of strong and weak nucleophiles. Not that you have to remember it right away. Just check this out. Most of these species, are negatively charged. H minus, D minus, T minus, OH minus. These are all negatively charged. R minus, all types of, alkyl groups. Okay, alkoxide groups. Everything you can see here. These are all negatively charged species. All negatively charged species can be designated as strong nucleophiles to, just as a broad way. And weak nucleophiles are most of the time neutral charged. Okay, like water, H2S, ROH, that is alcohol, ethers, thioethers, phenols, acids. These are all weak nucleophiles. Got it? Just a basic idea to start with. Now we'll understand what makes them strong and what makes them weak. Okay, so which means how strong nucleophilic nature it would have or how weak nucleophilic nature they will have. Let us go point by point. So to check out the nucleophilicity strength, so what we need, we'll go point by point. First, when donor or nucleophile atom is from same period. If it is from same period in the periodic table, then nucleophilicity will parallel with basicity or basic strength. I'll rather use the word basic strength, and inversely proportional to electronegativity. Okay, so in short, if you check out the nucleophilic strength, CH3 minus will be greater than NH2 minus, will be greater than OH minus, will be greater than F minus. And I'm sure you have come across this before also, so I hope you would remember that. This comes from the basic idea that if you consider NH3, H2O, right, HF, this is how you have studied. This is the acidic strength. If you check out the acidic strength will increase as you go from left to right. So the respective conjugate bases would be weak. So F minus is a weak base in this comparison, right? So thereby CH3 minus is a strong base. And since nucleophilicity goes in parallel with basicity here, we can say this is a strong base as well as a strong nucleophile. Okay. And second one, what you need to check is a nucleophilicity or nucleophilic atom from same group. So if you go down the group here, how do we need to perceive here? See, the attack, what is happening, right?
Daddy, you finish my homework.
Sorry guys. So the attack which is happening, let's say this is the leaving group which is present here, delta negative here, and a nucleophile is attacking. Okay, it would always attack at this sigma star orbital, which is the LUMO orbital of that carbon, and this is the HOMO orbital which is attacked, right? Now this nucleophilicity in this case, nucleophilicity will be inversely proportional to its basic strength and directly proportional to its size. Okay, one thing you can remember this way, if you talk about the HOMO orbitals, got it, sigma non-bonded orbitals. So we can say that a sigma non-bonded orbitals coming from 2p will have less energy compared to sigma coming from 3p. Sigma electrons, these are all non-bonded electrons, which is lone pair electrons coming from 4p and so on. So which means if you just recall, we discussed that HOMO should have highest energy and LUMO should have the lowest energy. Here we are comparing for the same LUMO with different HOMO orbitals. So therefore we can say that nucleophilic or nucleophilicity in this case would be F minus, Cl minus, Er minus and I minus, because you can see for I minus you would have a higher non-bonding electrons, right? So In short, I can say that there is a good extent of overlap from backside to sigma star orbitals. Okay, mainly we are looking out for saturated hydrocarbons only, so saturated carbon only. So I'm only talking mostly LUMO of sigma star. Okay, but if we talk about the basic strength, we check about the basic strength here, right? We know that F minus is stronger base compared to Cl minus, compared to Br minus, compared to I minus, right? Now here basic strength is only with respect to the type of acids which you are dealing with. So it is HF, HCl, HBr and HI. We know that HI is highly acidic here. This is the acidic strength. And the respective conjugate bases, if it is strong acid, they will be weak. Okay. But this concept is only valid as long as we are talking the solvent which is polar protic. So just make a note here that above concept is valid. As long as solvent is polar protic. Right? Anyways, the same logic will apply for all the groups here. So if we check out the nucleophilic strength in other groups also, for instance, if we take OH minus, it would be less nucleophilic compared to SH minus, compared to SEH minus. Okay. Similarly, if we compare NH3, it will be less nucleophilic compared to PH3, compared to ASH3, and so on. Okay. So down the group, this is how you can see the nucleophilic strength would be. But this is all about polar protic solvents. Now, in case of polar aprotic solvents, here nucleophilicity will be in parallel with the basic strength. So in short, if you take in water or methanol, I minus is stronger nucleophile than Br minus, Cl minus and F minus. But in DMF or DMSO, F minus is better than Cl minus, then Br minus, then I minus. Okay, this is how the nucleophilic strength would be. Now, what logic behind that? You know why this is happening like that? Okay, this is what we'll see understanding the solvents. What are the protic solvents? What they will do? I'll just give you in a short form here. Here, when it comes to I minus, Br minus, Cl minus, and F minus, in polar protic solvents, you know, the nucleophiles get strongly solvated. They get strongly solvated. So smaller size, more solvation. But in this case, none of them are solvated, but the bond strength that it forms, that is CX bond strength, the one which has more bond strength will act like a better nucleophile. So in this case, if you see, carbon and fluorine will make a stronger bond here, so that would act like a better nucleophile. The next point, what we will see here is that when you have nucleophilic atom is same, but it belongs to different family of functional groups. Okay, if we have different family of functional groups, then how do we compare? First, you can see CH3O minus. If you compare that with phenoxide, that is O minus. Okay, so this is the phenoxide ion, O minus. This is alkoxide. This is phenoxide. When you compare alkoxide and a phenoxide, then what you need to check? We know that here, as long as you have a same atom, right? O minus and O minus, as long as we have same atom, the dominancy will always with respect to its basicity. That is nucleophilic strength will be parallel to its basic nature or basic strength. Basic strength. In short, you know that phenoxide ion will be resonance stabilized here. You have done all of this in GOC already, right? So it would be in resonance stabilization throughout this molecule and so on. So because of this resonance stabilization, it would have less tendency to donate electrons. So due to resonance, less tendency to donate electrons. Now the same logic can be applied as long as we have, more stable basic compound, less will be its nucleophilicity. So you can see the same can be applied for the logic when you have phenoxide and CH3CO minus. Out of these two, phenoxide is better because CH3CO minus, is weaker base because it is more stable due to its equivalent resonating forms. This would have equivalent resonating forms, because of which that would be more stable. So I'm not writing the reasons because these are all things which you know. And if you consider acetate, which is CH3CO minus, this is definitely better than CH3SO3 minus. Okay, sulfide would have more amount of equivalent resonating structures. So if you check out the stability wise, definitely CH3CO minus is more stable compared to that of CH3SO3 minus, and hence nucleophilicity would also be more for acetate. Overall, if at all I write that, overall I can write this as CH3 CH2O minus alkoxides are better than phenoxides, are better than carboxylates, better than sulfonates. This is how the nucleophilic strength would be, or nucleophilicity. Okay. Now, next case what you will see is when you have sterically hindered bases. Now, whenever we have sterically hindered bases, they will act like poor nucleophiles. For instance, if we compare CH3O minus in comparison to tertiary butoxide, if you compare CH3O minus and tertiary butoxide, here you would see the basic strength. If I take this as 1 and 2 here, right? In case of basic strength, 2 is better than 1. But if we check out the nucleophilic strength or nucleophilicity, then 1 is better than 2. So if you have more sterically hindered, it becomes difficult for it to get oriented towards the electrophile and attack. Thereby, if you check out the strength or nucleophilicity overall, you would see CH3O minus is better than CH3 CH2O minus, better than CH3 CH3O minus, and tert butoxide. This would be the order. Okay, so more amount of steric hindrance, less will be the nucleophilicity. So nucleophilicity is directly proportional to steric hindrance. So these are the pointers which you need to know about how to compare the nucleophilic nature of same atom but belonging to different functional groups. If you have same atom with different functional groups, how it happens. Okay. Now let us see what are the solvent effects on nucleophilicity. We learned about what is a nucleophile. We learned about what is a solvent. Now let us try to understand what is the relation, how the nucleophilicity gets affected in different solvents. If it is a polar protic solvent, call it as PPS, we know that the dielectric constant here is high. And for instance, if I take an example CH3Br and I'm treating that with KCN, we will expect the product to be CH3 C triple bond N plus KBr. This is the product we are expecting. This is the substitution reaction which is happening in polar protic solvent. For instance, if we take this polar protic solvent as water, what is happening? We know that first point which we can see that KCN, right, has two parts here. KCN has two parts here. One is K plus, sorry, which is a metal ion, and Cn minus, which is the anion. Now both will get solvated here as this salt KCN is better soluble in polar protic solvent due to high dielectric constant. Okay. So what would happen is in polar protic solvent, this M plus, you can see this M plus get completely surrounded by water molecules. Same way this X minus get completely surrounded by water molecules, and both will get separated out. So here we can see that Cn minus is being highly solvated, hence its nucleophilicity decreases, or nucleophilic strength decreases. So in short, nucleophilic strength when you operate in polar protic solvents, it will always decrease. So that's what you can see, that in polar protic solvents always there is a decrease in nucleophilic strength, and sometimes the solvent itself will act like a nucleophile, and if that happens we call that reaction as solvolysis. So instead, if I take the same reaction, which we are taking in water, right? So if the same reaction in water, if it is done here, then water itself will attack, and thereby we might get an alcohol product as well. That reaction would be called as solvolysis. Okay, we'll see more in detail about solvolysis as we go ahead, but as of now, just remember what is happening in polar protic solvent. Now, when it comes to polar aprotic solvent, here we know that dipole moment, dielectric constant is low. Okay, and what points we can say here is that polar aprotic solvent has good solubility. Towards this salt which you are adding. Let's say Mx is a salt which you are adding. Okay. Therefore, availability of M plus and X minus will be in sufficient amount. So that is not an issue here. Definitely we will have enough M plus and X minus. And in polar aprotic solvent, what we will see here, we have high dense delta negative or anionic part, which solvates only the metal ion or metal cation. In this case, it is always cation. So you can see it is the cation which gets solvated, and which also implies that negative charge nucleophile is not solvated, hence nucleophilicity increases, or nucleophile is available to attack the electrophile. That is what you would see here. So in the solution here, you can see the metal cation gets solvated, and this is an aprotic solvent. For our example, I'm taking it as ethers. Ethers will have, dense negative charge on them, right? So they will try to solvate the metal cation here, leaving behind the nucleophile. So nucleophile hardly gets solvated here, right? So in conclusion, what we can say that all the polar aprotic solvents like this, which I have written here, right, they will solvate the metal ion and increases the nucleophilic strength of anion. So whenever we have an anion, the nucleophilic strength would be more. Okay. So in case of non-polar solvents, if we check out for non-polar solvents here, what I can say here, mx, the salt, mx salt here which we have added, is very less soluble. It is less soluble or it is insoluble, right? Due to which availability of nucleophile is less in substitution reactions. This is what usually happens. So hardly there is any amount of nucleophile that would be available. So usually reactions don't happen that easily in non-polar solvents. Few of the examples I have mentioned here, hexane, cyclohexane, CCl4, CS2, these are all non-polar solvents, right? But even though reactions might be slow, reactions might happen with slow rate. So what we can say that in case of NPS, we can say that weak ion pair will make them more soluble, and that's how they can act like a good nucleophiles. What does that mean? Suppose if you have M plus X minus and you're adding it to a non-polar solvent, okay, they might exist in this equilibrium M plus and X minus. So in case if the bonding between M plus and X minus, which is ionic bonding, is weak, then definitely it increases the quantity of X minus. So that's how it can start showing the nucleophilic strength. So we can say here that solubility of Mx will be decided, will decide the nucleophilic. This will decide the nucleophilic strength. Okay. So best thing you can check out is that nucleophilic strength order in NPS would be based upon what kind of a bonding it has. If it is a bond between Na plus CH3 minus compared to that of Na plus NH2 minus, Na plus OH minus, and Na plus and F minus, then definitely this will act like a better nucleophile as compared to that of NaF. Okay. So the reason here is weak ion pair. Yes, beta. Can you keep it on mute, beta? Can you hear me? Yeah.
Sir, you have written toluene in non-polar solvent.
It is very slightly polar, beta. Okay. So it would hardly show any aprotic qualities. Right. So mostly we'll use it as non-polar solvent.
Okay, sir.
Anybody else? Yeah. Okay. So similarly, if you go down the group, this is, you can see from left to right, right? You can see if you go from left to right how the nucleophilicity in non-polar solvent is. But if you go down the group, again, if you consider NaF plus minus, NaCl plus minus, NaBr plus minus, and NaI plus minus here. So obviously the weak ion pair would be with NaI. right? So this would be weak ion pair, hence this will be more soluble, hence this is a better nucleophile in non-polar solvents. I guess all of you understood that. So we discussed about 2 points. See, I'm going a little fast because this is the area which you know already. Okay. So nucleophilicity, what is basicity, and what are the types of solvents? What happens to the nucleophilicity in solvents? I hope all of you got that point so far. Now let us move on to the next concept, the third one, which is leaving group. Okay. This is more interesting and important for us, at least for this chapter. So leaving group, right? So it is a part of molecule. It is a part of substrate. It is a part of substrate or reactant that leaves the cationic part, of the substrate with an electron pair. With an electron pair. In short, after it comes out, it will be a base. So it is just a base which is coming out of substrate. And how we can remember it, that more stable the leaving group, better is the leaving ability. Now, if it is a more stable, we can also understand it as, if it is a weak or poor base, then it will act like a good leaving group. Good leaving groups. So that part of the molecule which is leaving with an electron pair is what we call it as a leaving group. And if it is a weak base which is happening, then it is definitely a good leaving group. Okay. In short, in reaction, if you check out nucleophile, as it is attacking with this substrate, which has this Lg part, which is the leaving group part, right? So normally it will take away the electron with it, and we will have a connection of this as a product, and this leaving group is coming out, right? So this is how the substitution reactions usually take place. Now in this we have many categories of leaving group. There are some very good leaving group, what we call it as the super leaving groups. Then we have better leaving groups, and also we have very poor leaving groups. So first we will focus on super leaving groups. Super leaving groups, as in, with even the weakest of the nucleophile, they can be easily removed out. For instance, if you check out these four, these are very, very good nucleophiles. They are very, very good leaving groups. This first one, CF3 and SO3 minus, okay, trifluoromethyl sulfonate, and in short, this can be represented as triflate, okay, triflate ion, or in short way we will write this as OTF. Similarly, you can see here, this is para-nitrobenzene sulfonate. Right. So this is para-nitrobenzene sulfonate, which also read as nosylate ion, or in short way we will write this as ONS. Now this group, you can see it is para-bromobenzene sulfonate, and this we will write it as brosylate ion, which is OBS. And last one, you can see, which is more useful from now onwards, you will hear this a lot of times, okay, para-methyl, right, benzene, or you can simply write it as toluene, right? So this is toluene sulfonate, call it as tosylate OTS. So these are very, very good leaving groups, correct? So they will, and if you observe this, they all coming from a very strong acid. So hence they are very weak bases. So all these conjugate bases which they will form, they all are coming from sulfuric acids, various benzene sulfuric acids. So they're all going to be very strong acids. Hence their respective conjugate base would be weak. Just like super leaving groups, then we have, better leaving groups. These are also good leaving groups, out of which you can see N2. Okay, so because this N2 will come as, suppose, let me write this first and show, if it is connected to substrate as N2 plus, okay, this N2 will come out very easily with the electron, because it takes the electron here, it will leave behind a carbocation and comes out as a neutral molecule N2. Okay, so that is what I meant N2 means here. So if we check out better leaving groups out of all these, N2 is a better leaving group. Similarly, H2O is a good leaving group here. This is also a better leaving group. CH3OH, I'm in connection with oxygen, and here oxygen, CH3H, this way, and ROH, CO, carbon monoxide. These are all, better leaving groups. Few good leaving groups, slightly, lesser than this better leaving groups. If you check out, then these are halides, Cl minus, Br minus, I minus. These are good leaving groups. Now the poor leaving groups, this list is important for us. What are the poor leaving groups? The super leaving groups and poor leaving groups are very important for us. You can see F minus, poor leaving group, OH minus, poor leaving group, Cn minus, NH2 minus, Nr2 minus, OR minus, and C triple bond CH, CH double bond CH2, right? So these are all poor leaving groups. As of now, remember the list and check out the list here. If you see, these are all coming from their respective weak acids. Okay, HF, water, HCN, ammonia, right? ROH, alcohol, acetylene. These are all weak acids. So their conjugate bases would be strong. So since they are strong bases and unstable bases, they usually do not depart the carbon atom very easily when a nucleophile attacks. Okay. So this is how the leaving groups should, these are the types of leaving groups. Now, just like how we compared nucleophilicity, now let us compare the leaving groups. So if we have various leaving groups, how do we compare it? Suppose if the leaving group is something like this, NH3 is coming as a leaving group, H2O is coming as a leaving group, ROH coming as a leaving group. Okay. Now, in these cases, the first thing you will check out is the phase in which they exist. If they are coming as gaseous phase, that means ammonia is straight away released as a gaseous state, then it will definitely act as a better leaving group compared to that of H2O or ROH. Okay, so at room temperature, normally we see that ammonia comes out as a gaseous state, so hence it is a better leaving group. So the reason is gaseous state. This is the first comparison. Second comparison, you would see the all the tosylates, sulfonates, which we saw that if you have NO2 here and we had bromine, SO3 minus, we had methyl here, CH3, SO3 minus. If you compare these two, definitely the one which has more withdrawing nature here will stabilize the carb anion better. So this bases will be more stabilized when you have electron withdrawing groups. So NO2 is a better electron withdrawing group compared to that of Br, compared to that of CH3. So this is, nosylate here, this is brosylate, and this is tosylate. So this would be the order of leaving groups. Now CF3, has a very strong withdrawing nature as compared to that of, nosylate. So you would see, if you compare this would be the best leaving group. Okay. So CF3 SO3 minus is the best leaving group which you will have, and it comes from its pK value itself. If you check out, it has much lower pK value compared to all these four. The next comparison which we will do is about CH3 CH2O minus, right? Then phenoxide ion CH3 CO minus, CH3 SO3 minus, which is exactly opposite to that of the leaving nature, right? I mean nucleophilicity. When we compared their nucleophilicity, CH3 CH2O minus was a better nucleophile here. So this is a very poor leaving group, right? And this is the best leaving group in this category. So these are all the weak conjugate bases, and as long as we have weak conjugate bases, they are going to be good leaving groups. Finally, if you see F minus, Cl minus, Br minus, and I minus here, right? Now you can see I minus will be a better leaving group as well as a good nucleophile, at least in polar protic solvent. Okay, so if you recall, in polar protic solvent, I minus was a better nucleophile, and here it is also a good leaving group. Okay, and the reason is the size increases down the group, so definitely the bond strength decreases. Got it? And also you can see, if you compare I minus, that is also the weakest of the bases in comparison with HF, HCl, HBr and HI. HI is the strongest acid, so its respective anion I minus or the conjugate base would be the weakest, so hence that is a better leaving group. The last comparison, you can see CF3 COO minus. If you compare that with CH3 CO minus, again this is quite acidic. When you take trifluoroacetate, acetic acid and simple acetic acid, you know that it has a very strong minus effect, because of which this would act like a good leaving group. So I guess these are all the cases you will come across when it comes to leaving group comparison. So I think you should be ready with these three terms. Okay, so we discussed about three important terms, guys. One thing is about nucleophiles, second thing is about solvents, third thing is about leaving group, and all these three are very essential to understand, substitution reactions. Now we'll start off with discussing, what are SN2 reactions. So first we'll discuss SN2 reaction today. See, SN2 by terminology, it is bimolecular. This 2 represents 2 molecules are involved in a nucleophilic substitution reaction. Suppose if the overall reaction is something like this, a nucleophile is attacking this particular carbon and a leaving group is leaving here, forming a product, right? This is the overall reaction. How does this exactly happen? You can check this out. This nucleophile will attack on the sigma star orbital, because if you consider carbon, okay, think about it, carbon has 3 bonds with hydrogen which are by sp3 hybridized. These are all sp3 hybridized. Now this orbital, right, if you see this orbital, this is also an sp3 hybridized, but it is connected to a more electronegative element. This leaving group has to be more electronegative element compared to carbon. So when that is connected, this sigma star which is forming will have the lowest of its energy out of comparison to all of them, and this is the LUMO orbital of carbon in which nucleophile will attack. And obviously in nucleophile the HOMO orbital will attack here. So the orbital which has the highest energy, always remember, highest energy orbital attacks the lowest energy empty orbital. Okay, so it is attacking the sigma star orbital, and you see the line of sigma star, it is just in the same line of the sigma bond along with the leaving group. Got it? So this is a saturated carbon. It is a saturated carbon on which there is a sigma star present, and this sigma bond will have its respective anti-bonding orbital on the opposite side in which the nucleophile is attacking, and this attack is the slow step. This attack is the slow step, and what we call it as the rate determining step. right? On doing that, we will come across a transition state. This is a symbol we'll be using for transition state from now onwards. Got it? So this is a transition state which you will see. A nucleophile is attacking, simultaneously a leaving group is going. So which means it is a concerted step. So it is a one-step reaction where leaving group is leaving, nucleophile is attacking, right? Now you would see that a planar molecule is forming here, got it, with an angle of 120 degrees, got it. So usually whenever in the transition state you would observe here, you would see all these uh, molecules which are present with the carbon, right? So these three will come in plane, okay, more like an sp2 hybridized carbon. Got it? In a transition state, we should not use the terminology hybridization, but based upon the structural alignment, you can say it is replicating an sp2 hybridized carbon. And from one end, nucleophile is attacking, from the other end, leaving group is leaving, and hence we will get a product like this. So we will have a new bond formation, which is the new sigma bond formation, and leaving group comes out of that. So this is overall how the mechanism take place for SN2 reaction. What are the important points we need to note from here is first, the rate of the reaction. Here, the rate of the reaction rate would be equal to some constant into nucleophile concentration multiplied by Rx, which is the alkyl halide concentration or the substrate concentration. Got it? Because in this slow step itself, we can see both nucleophile and the substrate both are being present in the rate determining step. And since in the rate determining step, two molecules are present, it is a bimolecular reaction. Okay. And if you were asked what is the order of the reaction, you can see order of the reaction here with respect to both nucleophile and alkyl halide, it is 1. So overall order is 2. Graphically, if you see how the rate is changing with respect to Rx, if I keep nucleophile constant, right, and with respect to Rx, then rate is equal to some constant into Rx. So it is like y is equal to mx, got it? But it would start with a particular rate here, got it? So we can say that would have some value like this here. Same way here also you can see rate would start like this. Got it? So this would be the rate of rate graphs for both of them, keeping one constant. Now another point which you can see here, if you observe the energy profile, first let me write the energy profile. This reaction will so take place if the new bond which is forming, check out this new bond, this bond is more stronger as compared to the carbon and leaving bond, leaving group bond. Okay, this bond should be weaker compared to this bond. So which means overall it is going to be an energy released. So we can say that if nucleophile and reacts with the substrate here, it will go through a transition state and reach to the products. And in the products you can see here, the products will have lower energy compared to the reactants, hence makes this an exothermic reaction. So this is going to be an exothermic reaction. Okay. And since it is an exothermic reaction, we can simply say that weak sigma bond is replaced by strong sigma bond, as delta H is negative. Okay. Yes, it is a single step reaction and it is a concerted step, right? So we know that. And now think about it. If nucleophile attacks here, okay, as the nucleophile is attacking, right? So as the nucleophile attacks here, what you would see, usually unstable or unstable anions or strong conjugate bases or in short, strong conjugate bases will act like better nucleophiles, right? So they usually act like a better nucleophiles because it has to be a simultaneous reaction. So nucleophile has to attack at the same time leaving group has to go. So the strength of the nucleophile decides if the nucleophile is a stronger one, it will definitely going to give a better reaction or a better SN2 reaction. Now in this, what I can tell you here, if you check out the transition state, one thing we can observe the transition state here. Transition state will have or rather will look more like substrate, or it will have all the structural features of substrate rather than that of products. And you know that is Hammond's principle. According to Hammond's principle, the transition state will always have similarities or structural similarities with the nearest neighbor. So in this case, for this transition state, the nearest neighbor is reactant, which is the substrate here. So if you consider the transition state nucleophile, which is connected with, which is attacking this carbon, and leaving group is going from the other end. This is delta negative, and this is the transition state. So usually if you consider this length L1 at the time of transition state and this L2, we will find L2 is less than that of L1. Okay, because you would see transition state would have more features of that of reactant, and reactant already there is a bond, right? So which means substrate already has a bond with leaving group, right? So that bond length would be smaller as compared to that of bond length that is forming with the nucleophile. Okay. Now you can see that what are all the strong nucleophiles? We just listed out few of them, right? HO minus, RO minus, PHO minus, CH minus, NO2 minus, HS minus, RS minus, PHS minus, all the halides. Okay. Fluorine depending upon the solvent. Okay, H minus, and in case of neutral molecules, then NH3 also act like a strong nucleophile. So these are the list of nucleophiles which will most frequently come across. And better leaving groups, if you observe, Cl minus, Br minus, I minus, and all of this list which I have put, OTS, OBS, ONS, these are all very good leaving groups. So on this, SN2 reaction would definitely take place. Now coming to the poor leaving groups, F minus, OH minus, OR minus, this list which we have just seen earlier, they usually does not go for SN2 reactions. Now which brings to our next important case, that in which cases should we consider SN2 and which cases we are very sure that SN2 will not happen, and which cases we know that SN2 will happen. Okay, so first we will try to list out the cases where SN2 will definitely not take place. Sorry. So let us start with that list first. So the cases where SN2 will not happen, right? If you see, there are two main reasons for SN2 not to happen. First reason could be backside attack. Backside attack. Which means if there is any interference in the backside attack, okay, on this Rx is not possible. For some or the other reason, if backside attack is not possible, that is one very important reason for not giving SN2 reaction. Second is Rx bond is too strong. Rx bond is too strong to be broken. This usually happens when you have double bond character arised. When we get double bond character between carbon and the leaving group. Okay, so remember, every time you will come across these two important reasons when it comes to reactions where SN2 is not happening. So we'll figure out which are the cases, starting with aryl halides. So the first case where you will see SN2 will not happen is the aryl halides. In aryl halides, you will see the lone pair present on halides will undergo resonance stabilization with the benzene. So because of which we can say a partial double bond character, a partial double bond character will inhibit SN2 reaction. Correct. Next, another important reason in this, which you can see, that nucleophile, if it has to attack, see, remember it has to attack from the backside only. But if you observe carefully, right, you see this here. This is sp2 hybridized carbon. You see this is the sp2 hybridized carbon on which it has to be planar molecules. So this carbon has this planarity here. These three are on the same plane, with chlorine being the leaving group here. Okay, so if this leaving group has to leave, then the nucleophile has to attack from this or from this end here, from the back side. But this sigma star orbital is within the cage of this entire unit, correct? So which means this ring is this sigma star is present within this ring, so there is no way that this nucleophile can approach it. So we can say that this nucleophile cannot approach here, which inhibits the reaction to happen. So therefore, other reason which we can see is that the backside attack is not possible. Backside attack is not possible, and the reason is the LUMO sigma star is present inside the ring. Okay, so it is difficult to approach. So there was a similar question which was asked in JEE 1990, where it was asked like, aryl halides are less reactive towards nucleophilic substitution reactions as compared to alkyl halides due to. Okay, now if you observe the formation of less stable carbonium, no, there is no carbonium ion which is forming here. Resonance stabilization, yes, because of this resonance only there is a partial double bond character that has arisen. And longer carbon halogen bond, no. sp2 hybridized carbon bond, yes. So actually these are the two reasons because of which this nucleophilic substitution is not happening. So in short, if at all I have to put all the reasons here, remember the reason could be asked in a different way, okay, different pattern. They could say just resonance, they could use the terminology as partial double bond, they can use this LUMO sigma star present being in the nucleus, okay. Either ways they can ask the reasons, so you be prepared, you know, from all the ways. So first, partial double bond character. Second, backside attack of nucleophile, not possible. Okay, and third, nucleophile and pi electron repulsion. Got it? Fourth, resonance. I mean, anyway, these are all similar terms. You know, partial double bond is because of that resonance only. So you could be asked in any of the ways. So you remember any of these terminologies given, these are all correct options. Correct? So it is a partial double bond, or whether it is a backside attack, or nuclear pi electron repulsion, because nucleophile is not able to approach here because of these repulsions due to this, you know, pi electron cloud. Okay guys, I hope you understood this reaction, for this reason for aryl halides not to participate in SN2. Second, we can see that similar thing happens in vinyl halides. Okay, now we'll go a little fast because you got an idea that what is happening in, you know, resonance forms. So in case of aryl halides here, again there won't be any SN2 reaction happening. You can see that in aryl halides also. Observe it carefully. This Cl, this bond and this hydrogen bond. Got it? So all of them are in the same plane here. This Cl, H and this bond are in the same plane. Got it? So which means this is how planar it is. Okay. So if it is planar, then definitely this sigma star is coming on this side here on from the same plane. So when it is coming from the same plane, again the problem is when the nucleophile tries to approach here, got it? Okay. There would be enough electron cloud present on it, as well as the lone pair present on chlorine will also give a back bonding, thereby getting a partial double bond character. Again, the reasons are similar: partial double bond character, partial double bond character coming here, and backside attack. Backside attack is sterically hindered. Sterically hindered as pi cloud or a pi bond will repel. Pi bond will repel the incoming nucleophile. Okay. So I hope you understand the terminology for that. So I guess you write this once again, reasons, you practice this reasons, because I've seen, like, in the last 10 years, this kind of reason questions have been asked, right? So you can check it out. What are the reasons? Partial double bond character, backside attack is not possible. The third case which you will see is tertiary alkyl halides. In tertiary alkyl halides, because of heavy steric crowding, backside attack of nucleophile won't be possible. You can see that this is a sigma star on which if a nucleophile will try to approach, it can't approach it because of the steric crowding which arises because of this methyl groups, all these three methyl groups. So you can see that here nucleophile is trying to approach, but because of the structural, you can see the 3D structure here, we cannot see nucleophile being able to attack that sigma star. So hence SN2 won't happen here. So reason, you can see here, this is the reason: the heavy crowding of the molecule will inhibit the nucleophilic attack. Next one is when you have leaving group with beta carbon at 4° carbon here. So suppose if you have we are leaving from here, correct? But this carbon, although this is a primary carbon, the next carbon is a completely amyl halide. Amyl halide as in neocarbon group, neocarbyl group. So you can see it is a 4° or a neocarbyl group here. If this is the case, then also it is too bulky for nucleophile. Suppose if a nucleophile is trying to approach here, this bulkiness will not let nucleophile attack here as well. Okay, this is also a very important reason. SN2 should not be done either with a tertiary tertiary alkyl halides or with a beta 4° carbon halides. Okay, so none of them would happen for SN2. So therefore, it is too bulky. The reason would be too bulky to let nucleophile approach the sigma star orbital. Sigma star orbital of carbon. Okay, right? Sorry. Next important reactant where SN2 does not happen is a bridgehead carbon. Suppose if the leaving group was on the bridgehead carbon, right? Again, it will not give SN2 reaction. Now observe the diagram carefully here. In the bridgehead carbon, you can see that this sigma star which is present, that will also be almost caged into that, caged into that particular structure. Because it is a three-dimensional structure, you can see if this chlorine is going here, on the opposite side there would be sigma star, and if nucleophile has to attack, it cannot reach because it is inside that cage of ring-like structure. So therefore we can say that sigma star, I'm writing reason here, right? Bridgehead carbon cannot get sp2 transition state because it has to break this bond here. It is already under a lot of bond strain here. You can see angle strain is there. So if a nucleophile approaches also, then all these three bonds has to come, at almost 120 degrees, which is not possible. Okay. This is first reason. Second reason is that sigma star has steric hindrance due to cage-like structure. Next, it is a violation of Brett's rule, right? Let me remind you what is Brett's rule. Brett's rule tells us that a double bond or a cation cannot be formed on the bridgehead carbon, correct? So you can see there is definitely not a double bond, but here it is trying to form sp2 hybridization in the transition state, which is also not possible. Got it? So Brett's rule tells us that we can never get any kind of an sp2 hybridized intermediate or a double bond or a carbocation, right, on the bridgehead carbon. So it is a violation of Brett's rule also. Hence, there won't be any attack of nucleophile on bridgehead carbons. So no no SN2 reaction happens here. Next, if you see a cyclopropyl group here, right? So cyclopropyl chlorine. In here, what is happening? This chlorine orbital which is present here, right? Now it is more or less like, CH2 double bond CHCl. Got it? Where this bond which is present, this is a hexocyclic bond. If you remember, these are hexocyclic bonds. These hexocyclic bonds will show pi character and start interacting with the lone pair present on chlorine and increases the strength between carbon and chlorine. Okay, so that will regulate for nucleophile to approach. So let me write the reason here. Hexocyclic bonds show pi bond character with carbon orbitals. Hence, difficult to break carbon chlorine bond. The second reason is it cannot get a transition state, right? Because if it has to get a transition state, this already has a bond angle strain of with an angle of 60 degrees here, which is supposed to be 109 degrees, correct? But if it has to go through a transition state using SN2 reaction, definitely it has to come up to 120 degrees, which is not possible, right? So that is another reason. So it cannot get sp2 type transition state, okay, as it is a smaller ring with high bond angle strain. Okay, we'll start checking out about cyclobutyl, cyclopentyl, cyclohexyl as we go through the further examples, because these are only the cases where SN2 will never happen, right? So I'm only fixing on to those examples. Slowly we'll see what happens in cyclohexyl, cyclopentyl, cyclobutyl. In that case, how the reactions are happening by SN2, but by what rate? Okay, we'll see that. Next case, this is also a case where SN2 cannot take place here because this becomes almost cyclic. Got it? Cyclopentyl is supposed to have an envelope kind of a shape, but because of these two conjugated double bonds, it will almost take a planar shape. So when it almost takes a planar shape here, correct? Same problem happens. This sigma star which is present, correct, will still have an influence of that pi bonds. Got it? So therefore, if nucleophile is trying to approach here, it has to go through the repulsions of those pi electrons. These are the pi electron cloud. You can see this is the pi electron cloud up and down. So because of that pi electron cloud, nucleophile cannot approach that. So therefore, the main reason for this is backside attack is not possible due to steric crowding. Okay, this is the important reason for it. So I hope you understood why this doesn't happen. SN1 definitely doesn't happen. SN1 is more about carbocation formation, that we will come when we discuss SN1. Now the last thing where SN2 does not happen is when you have a very poor leaving groups. Right? So if a nucleophile is trying to approach and leaving group has to leave, this leaving group won't leave because it is a poor leaving group. So what are the kind of leaving groups we are looking at? OH doesn't leave that easily. NH2, NR2, SH, SR, OCH3, OR, fluorine, OPH, etc. These are all the groups which does not leave easily. So SN2 is not possible in these cases. So let me just summarize once again. What are the cases? Got it. First is aryl halides. Aryl halides never go for SN2 reaction. Next, vinyl halides. Vinyl halides doesn't go for SN2. Third degree alkyl halides. Okay. Next case, when you have a neo group attached on the alpha carbon, then also it will not take place. Then in bridgehead carbons, that means when carbon is attached at the bridgehead of a bicycles. Next, cyclopropyl group. Next, when you have a cyclic resonance which is not letting nucleophile to approach. Last one being poor leaving groups. So these are the cases where definitely SN2 will not take place. Okay. So far, if you check out the pointers what we discussed, got it? Eventually, I will summarize everything. Now, let me just revise once again. First, we check about the rate. It is in second order with bimolecular reaction. Depends on concentration of the reactant as well as nucleophile, right? It is a single step reaction, and every substitution reaction which is happening is an exothermic reaction. Got it? Then it will enhance through good leaving groups and strong nucleophiles, right? And then we learned about which groups it doesn't give. Now we'll go slowly into the stereochemistry of SN2, okay, which tells us what happens when you have a stereo molecule here. So suppose if you have any stereo carbon here, which means it has some chiral center, if it is a chiral center, chiral carbon with 4 different groups here, then inversion in configuration will take place, and this inversion is called as Walden's inversion. Okay, this is a very important aspect. Now let us look it carefully. Suppose when a nucleophile is approaching this sigma star, this is the sigma star orbitals, right? Now as the nucleophile approaches, it is coming with a cloud, right? Electron cloud. So because of that cloud, right, slowly these groups will start repelling, and they'll start moving in this direction because it has to go through this transition state, right, getting a planar molecule. So as they come to the planar molecule, another thing what happens, the electrons between carbon and halide will also start moving rapidly. Already it has some inductive effect. Okay, because of that inductive effect only, it has this delta negative and delta positive charge. But as the nucleophile start approaching, this inductive effect becomes even stronger. This is called inductomeric effect. So when the nucleophile approaches this sigma star, you would observe an inductomeric effect happening, which means this rapid movement of electrons towards leaving group. This is called inductomeric effect. Okay. So in short, let me write that in transition state, leaving group is pulling electrons towards itself. Okay, then it's inductive additive effect increases abruptly and this type of an effect is called inductomeric effect. So we would observe an inductomeric effect happening here, right? And electrons are more shifted towards leaving group. So as from the leaving group, when the leaving group leaves, finally we will get this inversed stereo molecule. All right. So from this transition state, let me show again. So from this transition state, we can see nucleophile got connected with a sigma bond, newly formed sigma bond, and leaving group has left with those electrons. All right. Now, for instance, if I talk as an example, if you check out an example here, if OH minus approaches this chiral center, okay, this is a chiral molecule, you can see that. So from this chiral center, which means there is some sigma star here on which this nucleophile is attacking. As it attacks, the substrate has to undergo inversion if it is going through SN2 mechanism, right? See the priority. If you see the priority here, according to CIP rules, priority bromine is 1, then methyl, deuterium, and hydrogen is 4, right? So you can see that it is going through 1, 2, 3, which means it is a clockwise rotation here. So this is how it is moving. It is moving clockwise rotation. So if it is clockwise rotation, which means it is R configured. So as HO minus attacks on this, right? Now what would happen in the configuration? You would observe here that this position of OH has come to this side and methyl has moved on to this side. It is like a odd number exchange, right? Just recall the RS configurations, how we used to do, you know, in Fisher projection we used to do, right? If there is an odd number of changes, then definitely configuration will be inverted. So from substrate, you would see this product formation. The product formation, again, if you check out the priority, this is 1, 2, 3, and 4, correct? So if you check out this 1, 2, 3 here, so it is coming anti-clockwise direction. So it is actually S configured. Okay. So what happened? Configuration got inverted, or rather configuration got changed. So configuration underwent inversion. So this type of an inversion is called Walden's inversion. Now, very important thing to note, does that mean every time R has to become S or S has to become R? Not necessarily. Inversion does not mean that. Okay. Inversion means there is a change in the structure where there was a leaving group. It is the nucleophile is not coming from that side. Now it is coming from the other side. Okay. So read this carefully. In SN2 reaction, product have reverse configuration from the reactant. It does not mean that it will have to have change in its, you know, absolute configuration. Okay. So it does not mean R has to change S or S has to change R, or D has to change to L or L has to change to D, because that depends upon the CIP rules. Because here bromine was priority 1 and which was changed by OH, which was also priority 1, but it does not have to be same, you know, same priority when the attack happens. Okay. Maybe here there was already some other group on which the attack was taking place, and after the attack the group the priority might have changed. Correct. So in that case, what we can say, RS configuration may be retained or that might be inverted. Okay. But here Walden inversion is to say that the configuration get reversed. It does not indicate that R is becoming S or S is becoming, or it is not compulsory. Right. So in short, if I put few examples, you can see that here bromine, if Cn minus is a nucleophile which is attacking on this group, Br is a good leaving group, then the product formation in this case would be with a configuration like this. Got it? Because bromine, which is coming out of the plane, it will come it will act like a leaving group and leave from that, while Cn minus will attack from inside and thereby it makes a bond, it makes a new sigma bond inside. Okay. Same way here, if deuterium, you can see that deuterium is present here. Push it up. Yeah. So here iodine is to be replaced by OH minus, right? So the new bond formed here, what you can say, you can write CH3D, OH will be on this side, H will be on this side. This is how the configuration. Similarly, here bromine is coming out of the plane. So as soon as the OH minus attacks here, as soon as the OH minus attacks from the down here, from the opposite side, back side. So because of which we will have a configuration this way, going inside the plane, OH, and this CH3 will still be retaining its configuration. Okay, so I guess you guys understood that. So in short, you have come across this in stereochemistry already, that any chiral position, if you make odd number of exchanges, that will lead to inversion of configuration. But if you make even number of exchanges, it will tend to get retention of the configuration. Based on this, there are a lot of examples in SN2. The assignment which I gave you will also have a lot of examples on this. Just go through that. Now, check this case where this is a very common case that has been asked in exams. One, if nucleophile and leaving group both are same, okay, then racemization will take place. Okay, considering of course it is SN2 mechanism, which means suppose if this is an isotopic iodine, maybe it is 137 iodine attacking on this carbon, which is connected to 135 iodine carbon. Got it? So here if it is attacking from the backside here on the sigma star, okay, and this iodine has to leave from here, then in the presence of acetone here, what I'm getting, this is the I minus, which is the other isotope, or 135. I'll just label it 135, and this iodine which has got is 137. This was 135 and this is 137, which has replaced it. Okay. If you see the energy profile, it has started with this, and it is ended with this, right? So it is the same molecule, the energy is almost the same. So hence you would see for this kind of racemization, you will see K is equal to 1. Okay. So there would be equal rate on forward direction as well as the backward direction here. Okay. What happens to the optical activity? If you see, let's say, if you consider here, this is check out priority wise, this is priority 1, priority 2 and priority 3. So which means R configured, or I'll write it as plus configured. So from plus configuration, it is changing to minus configuration, right? But as it is changing slowly, this system would arise such a way that this would be around 50%. After the completion, this would also be around 50%, which means it has undergone racemization. So over the time, if you check out what is happening over the time here, that optical rotation will almost become 0, or it will become an optically inactive solution due to racemization. Okay. So I hope you guys understood that. Okay, one question usually students do ask me is that, sir, these two are isotopes, correct? These two are isotopes. Then don't we consider their, the angle would be different, correct? Their angle will be different, or the rotation on the, or the absolute angle which you will see on the polarimeter would be different. Okay, see, these are very heavy isotopes. When you have such heavy isotopes, the difference due to isotopic nature will be minimal. So both of them will give almost similar optical rotation. If this is giving positive 100 degrees on the polarimeter, this would give negative 100 degrees. Okay, so that is how the reaction would take place here. So now the important thing what you need to note here is that when optically active to iodo-octane. Okay, guys, 1 second. Sorry. So when optically active 2-iodooctane is treated with NaX, this NaI, in this case I'm taking iodine, NaI star, under SN2 conditions, it is formed, second, office. Sorry, can all of you keep mute, please? Right. Okay. So optically active 2-iodooctane is treated with Na under SN2 condition. Okay. It is found to lose found to lose. It is found to lose its optical activity. It's found to lose its optical activity due to formation of racemic mixture. Racemic mixture. Okay. So this is an important line, everybody. So it is observed that the rate of racemization is twice the rate of inversion. Okay, so I hope you understood why. Got it. So rate of racemization is twice the rate of inversion. Okay. Reason being, suppose if you have 100 molecules, correct, out of 100 molecules, if one molecule has changed to inversion, okay, this was retarded molecules and this is becoming inversion. Okay, so for racemic mixture, if it has to racemic mixture, then this one from inversion and one from retention, both will together form a racemic mixture, right? This both will form a racemic mixture. Correct. So for every inversion, there are 2 times of the inversion products, or rather the total number of products undergoing racemization. So in generally, remember this line importantly. Even if you do not get into the depth of this idea, just remember that rate of racemization is always twice the rate of inversion during racemization through SN2. Okay. So how much amount of rate that is happening for inversion? It would be twice that of rate of racemization, because both activity of both retention and inversion molecule together forms the racemization. But for inversion only we require one molecule. Correct. One molecule which was R, if it is converted to S, okay, remember it that way. So it got inverted, right? But when it comes to racemic mixture, that one R and one S together will become a racemic mixture. So the rate is almost twice that of rate of inversion. So remember it that way. So rate of racemization is twice that of rate of inversion. And this comes from the fact that why there is always, we have been very persistent about the idea that there is always a backside attack. Okay, experimentally what it has been noticed that inertness of the nucleophuse, which is nucleophile, at the bridgehead carbon in SN2 condition proves that backside attack is must for SN2. So when this molecule was taken with OH minus, there was no reaction at all. So which proves us that SN2 can only happen, with backside attack. Got it? So that is why we are very persistent about why there has been always backside attack. Few reference books tells us that, through diagram it is shown that if this is a carbon and this is a chlorine bond which is present like this, correct? Okay, and it would have this side of the particle, this side of the part is sigma star, this side of the part is sigma star, okay, and this side also would be sigma star here, correct? So why can't a nucleophile can attack from this end? Why can't it attack from this end? Or as this group lives here, slowly here also there is a sigma star which is forming. Why can't it attack? I hope now you understood, because this experimentally has been shown that there is an inertness which is happening with the bridgehead group, which tells us the backside attack of SN2 is must. If that is not happening, which means there is no SN2 happening. Okay. Now, usually so far we have seen the pointers that what are the important features of SN2, how stereochemically we have to understand that it is always a backside attack for SN2. Now, another factor which increases the rate is its transition state. If there is any group which is stabilizing the transition state, correct, will always increase the rate. So there may be multiple routes through which transition state can go towards products. So the one which has the lowest transition state is the route which it will adopt, because it is a kinetically driven reaction. Got it? So SN1, SN2 are always kinetically driven reactions. So they will always look out for the shortest, or rather more stable transition state. Got it? So now if you observe here, in case of electron donating groups, in case if there is an electron donating group with a pi bond or with a lone pair on the alpha carbon, this is the alpha carbon on which leaving group is going and nucleophile is attacking. Suppose on that alpha carbon there is one group which has a lone pair or a pi bond attached to it, then that will help the transition state stability, or rather that will increase the transition state stability. So hence that is the new route which it will take up, and thereby it will go through a path where it is taking a lowest energy transition state, and that increases the rate drastically for SN2. Okay, so we will see those cases. That is the first thing which you need to understand based on transition state. Second thing, what are the other factors which will affect the SN2 rate? Okay, you can see these are the 4 pointers. You can see one is structure of substrate, next nature of the leaving group, nature of the solvent, nature of nucleophile, and stability due to transition state, which I already told you. Okay, if the stability increases for the transition state, then rate of the SN2 will also increase. Now let us look one by one what happens to the structure of substrate, structure of leaving group, and so on. But before that, let me present to you one simple experimental data. Got it? And this experimental data helps us a lot to understand, how the SN2 reactions are happening. See this experimental data closely. This is a primary alkyl halide, okay, and this Rx, if it is been replaced by I minus, this is the overall reaction which is happening. Okay, so let me expand this. Rx is the substrate on which I minus is attacking as a nucleophile. For these various R groups, these are all the various R groups, what is the relative rate which is taking place? Okay, so with respect to this is considering this as rate 1. Okay, considering this as rate 1, what happens to the rate of the other groups? Check it out. Okay, so for this 1, 2, 3, 4, this is butyl chloride. For this butyl chloride, for SN2 reaction where iodine is attacking and chlorine is leaving, if at all I say the rate is 1, with respect to that, what happens to the other case? Let us see. Okay, and I will put remarks to every or rather the pointers, the reason why it is more or less. Okay, so first case, check out. Here the case is pretty simple. Here the reason is it is being a primary amine, because it is a primary alkyl halide. So primary carbon position, correct? With respect to that, now let us see the next one. If you check out CH3Cl, okay, in the transition state, it will only have 3 hydrogens like this. It would be the leaving group here and nucleophile. with only hydrogens here, and hydrogens are very small in size here, so they will hardly give any kind of a steric hindrance for incoming nucleophile. But in the case above, you can see here, if you check out where the nucleophile approaches and leaving group is going here, one of the group is very bulky, which is that butyl group or propyl group. Okay, rest two are hydrogens, here, but the other one is a very bulky group, because of which definitely CH3Cl will have very high rate. So the main reason behind this, okay, because of okay, less steric hindrance, right? Now, if you check out on the next case, here the crowding has increased. It has become secondary alkyl halide. So that is the reason why the rate has drastically decreased now. Alright. So therefore, this is because of more steric hindrance. So steric hindrance is playing a very important role in SN2. Now, when you have allyl group, allyl group, here you can see this carbon as chlorine, so this makes it an allyl position chlorine. So when you have an allyl group, as you can see on this alpha carbon, there is a pi bond system which can help its transition state. How does it help? Check it out. Suppose if you have carbon connected to chlorine, which has an orbital in which one orbital is of chlorine. One orbital is of chlorine, which is leaving, and the other orbital is of a nucleophile, which is attacking. Now here this carbon is connected to another carbon which has a pi bond system. Right. This carbon is connected to another carbon which has a pi bond system here. So this pi bond electrons will help the which help this transition state to get stabilized. Right. So this delocalization of pi electrons will help the transition state. So that brings the stability. So thereby you can say that reaction, or let me write the reason, pi bond support in stabilizing transition state. Because of that, this would become because of that, you can see the rate has increased. Correct. Next, this is not a case of SN2. We will just remember it for a while. This is a case of SN1. Okay, this is a pure case of SN1, and this is a very important reference for SN1, right? So in short, here when you have a allylic 3 degree, no SN2, but it will go for SN1. Why that happens, we'll discuss in SN1 case. Next, you can see benzylic form. Benzylic form is also a pi bond system here. So here also you can say that when carbon and chlorine are present, so this pi bond, this carbon which has a pi bond, right? This carbon which has a pi bond, and that will also, this pi bond will also help with the transition state here. So it will help. So thereby we can say that here also there is a pi bond support. In stabilizing transition state. Okay, I'll take just 5 minutes, guys. Let me finish this. Next, like I told you, in case if there is a lone pair also supporting, then also the transition state get very, very stable. So here also you can see that lone pair support in stabilizing transition state. Okay, lastly, this is a very important case which you can see it has increased so drastically. Okay, so almost 1 lakh times more than that of a regular 1 degree alkyl halide. Okay, here what is happening, you can check out. We have phenyl, then C double bond O with CH2 and Cl. This is how it is, correct? At the very start of the lecture, I told you one thing, that when you have C double bond O, then the pi star orbital would be the LUMO for that C double bond O. And for the CH2, we have sigma star. And when the nucleophile approaches, what happens? These two, pi star and sigma star, correct? Both of them being antibonding orbitals, they will interact with each other to bring even a lower, antibonding molecular orbital. So what would happen? You can see by energy terms. Okay, you can see usually sigma star would have less energy as compared to that of, show here, as compared to that of pi star orbital. Okay, but as both of them interact with each other, they will create even an orbital which is quite lower in energy, like this. Okay, so this lower, hybrid kind of a molecular orbital which is formed, so which is lower energy LUMO. Okay, which is a hybrid of both pi star and sigma star, and that have an immense pull of electrons. Got it? Another way, just by electronic effect, if you look out, C double bond O will give a strong minus effect. Okay, that will also increase the delta positive present on carbon. Got it? Because of which nucleophile will also attract that carbon at a much faster rate. So that's how the rate will also increase. But that is not an primary importance. The main important part is the approach of nucleophile to the hybrid antibonding molecular orbital. So this lower antibonding molecular orbital, or what we call it as the LUMO, is the main reason for such a very high value of this reaction. All right. So let me just write down that due to intermixing of two antibonding molecular orbitals, lower energy LUMO has produced. Okay, which is easily penetrated by nucleophile. I hope you guys understood that. So